Europe is falling right now, and today we will discuss why Greece can't pay its bills. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. I want to get into Greece today, obviously a very hot topic in the news, and I'll begin with this right here. Greek deposits. Not only has it become worse than it was during 2011, how the whole sky was falling in Europe and everything was terrible, it's actually become worse than that, and in fact has gone back to decades-old numbers. 2005 was the last time that the Greek deposits have been so low. This is a very serious situation for Greece. Now, what exactly has happened here? Obviously, Greece is in a bit of turmoil at the moment. Their government cannot cope with the amount of debt that they have been put in by the banking elite. These technocrats have in fact put them in this position. We have seen what credit default swaps can do to a nation. Now the people have wised up and have taken their money and put it overseas, and they're not claiming it because they know that it is going to be evaporated at some point. So they are basically risking it and taking a penalty should they need to, and the money is basically sitting overseas just waiting. But what has the government's response been? And that is Greece to offer taxpayers a deal to get money back home. The country is hurting. They are obviously just hemorrhaging at the moment, and this article out of Reuters outlines how Greece is allowing money to be that is held abroad by its taxpayers to be declared without penalty and taxed at a discount rate, a move to help overcome a cash crunch threatening the country with bankruptcy. They are going to have to file for bankruptcy in their own way, simply because they cannot be sustained in this way that they're doing this in every single month. They have some major payment to make and they can never make that payment. It is always at the very last second. So eventually the steam will run out here. The question is when. The government will table a bill to allow citizens to voluntarily declare their deposits abroad. I highly suggest here that this is not going to happen. Many people, in fact, the majority of the people are simply going to leave their money overseas, and this is just the case. Under the planned law, the deposits may be taxed at a rate of 15 to 20%. I really don't think people are going to bring their money back in, regardless of the fact that they're not going to be penalized for these actions, as well as the fact that they're going to be taxed here. They don't want to be taxed at all. That's the reason why they put their money overseas. But this could end up into a situation similar to which we saw during the financial crisis, where the Swiss government has essentially given up all of the numbered accounts. So this could very well happen yet again. This is a translated article from Germany, and very important to know this. The federal government, and I should say here, this is a poor translation from Google Translate. The federal government is working on a plan that will allow it to keep Greece in the case of a sovereign default in the euro. According to Time, they said fears of the coalition in Berlin that the government in Athens in one of its payment obligations, possibly the coming weeks, cannot be fulfilled. In this case, the ECB would have to stop supplying the country with the euro. So let's give a bit of a translation on that and just a summary. Essentially what it's saying is that Berlin or Germany is having some major troubles right here with Greece. Obviously, they're being a big creditor to Greece in many ways, but they're saying that the ECB is going to have to put their foot down on this as well. Greece could barely afford a repayment to the IMF. The now discussed plan aims to enable the ECB to finance Greece in the case of a failure further. That's right, they will print money out of thin air and give it to Greece, something that they suggested would never be possible. It's not allowed, but here they are. When they're in trouble, they will do whatever they need to. So this is very important to note. I want to move on though. Speaking of Germany, look at this right here. They're shorting German bonds. So the bond market getting shorted right here after one individual in a second here, but most importantly, Bill Gross saying that it is time to short the German bond market. And this is exactly what has happened. And look how far it came in a very short order. We'll see where it goes from this point, but very important to note that the negative interest rate really isn't the best policy, and that's obviously the case. In my book, I talked about bonds. Governments will go bankrupt in the near future. Euro contagion is already underway with the massive bailouts needed to support the system. You can see how this is all tying into what I'm talking about today. The book was written in 2010, 2011. Here we are in 2015 where it is all taking place. So when a government goes bankrupt, obviously individuals who buy those bonds, you as an investor, are possibly heading towards trouble. They could bail out certain bondholders, but I really don't think that will be the case. It will always be the elite who get their bailouts, and it will never be you and I. I'm going to move on to this right here. Spain and Portugal can cope with a Grexit. That's right, if Greece exit the EU, and I'm sure it will be oh so orderly, Spain and Portugal, they'll be okay. That is according to the Wall Street Journal. Both countries are at risk from a Greek Eurozone exit, but they have confidence their economies can withstand the shock. That's right. Even though their banks couldn't handle their own problems, they will have no problem whatsoever if Greece happens to default, happens to go bankrupt, and requires them to go back on their own currency, the drachma, and perhaps we'll have to just, take this for what it is. Now, I want to connect this in with this next article here before I give my opinion. Germany should fear a Brexit more than a Grexit. With all the European and especially German eyes on Greece, they're asking why isn't the EU more worried about a British exit from the Union? And what they suggest in this article here out of the local, essentially saying that, Greece is a very small economy. They can't do anything. It is Britain that we need to fear about exiting the EU. They've suggested that they don't want much part of this, and essentially that this is a very situation should one of the bigger nations have to leave. What I would suggest is what I've been suggesting here for quite some time, and it is that all of the dominoes will fall. As soon as one happens, this will snowball, and we will have a contagion that I spoke about in my book to take place yet again. That's all I wanted to get to for this, but wanted to connect it in with Venezuela. Venezuela rations power as demand soars on hot weather. This article is out of Reuters and essentially suggesting that the measures that they're putting into place, cutting the workday for public officials to 6 hours and asking private companies to boost energy efficiency and inspecting malls and factories to ensure they meet reduced power consumption targets. This is the failure of this government right here. We can see that this is a terrible situation for the people. Everything is being rationed, from their food, from their general supplies to their power, all because of the failure of this government structure. This is where the developed nations of the world are heading. This is the same thing that happens in every nation, where they basically get into a situation of poverty, of unemployment, of inflation, and in deflation in other categories, of course. And what happens here is that we have a falling economy, we have civil unrest, we experience riots. Think about Baltimore right now. And to extend on that, what's happening in Europe will expand, and the nations of the world will look a lot like Venezuela does right now. This is a foreshadowing into the future. High inflation in certain categories. We have deflation in other categories. We have massive levels of unemployment. We have rationed everything. And this is not pretty for the future. So I just wanted to ask you guys, if you found it informative, please give me a thumbs up. It helps out a lot. I also wanted to note, I checked out the Facebook page, which I do not check very often. In fact, I couldn't remember the last time I checked in over there. So I took a look and noticed people have been messaging me for months. In fact, I have messages in there from January I have not replied to, and I will get back to each and every one of you. It's just a matter of time. I didn't even realize that people were still emailing me or messaging me on there. Please, if you're going to message me, the best place to do so is at my email address. That's david@themoneygps.com, as well as getting on the Insiders too. That's even a better place. But what I'm thinking about doing is answering the questions on a video. So I will take one, two, three, perhaps more questions if they're quick or long, depending on the situation, and just answer them, and do that in such a way that everybody can get the answer, because a lot of the questions often come to me repeated, so I would like to answer them online. I could do this with questions that are asked within the videos, on the comments below. I can do this with things that come through Facebook or emails or what have you, and I'd like to do that, and would certainly like your permission on that, of course. So that is something that I intend on doing in the near future here. Once again, please give me a thumbs up on here, and don't forget to go to Amazon and flip through the book. If you like this type of information, you'll definitely love The Money GPS, the book I wrote. And you could flip through, see the table of contents, see a few pages on there. So the link is always in the description, where you can flip through the book and see if you like it. Take care.